Welcome back to Hen House Files, where every clucking mystery gets plucked, cooked, and served piping hot. Today's case comes from a viewer who submitted a story so creepy, it'll make your feathers stand on end. It starts with a sleepover. It ends with a concussion, a ghostly boy, and a secret buried beneath the stairs. So grab your flashlight and follow me into the dark. I was 13 when this happened. My cousin Maddie was 14. We were inseparable that summer. I practically lived at her house. It was one of those older two-story homes in Colorado, tan siding, green shutters, kind of cottagey, but with a weird basement that always smelled like wet bricks and paint thinner. Maddie's room was down there. Now, I hated the basement. There was no real reason. No tragic history or creepy old owner. At least not that I knew. But it was always way too cold. Even in July. Maddie had a space heater just to make it livable. There was also this storage door under the stairs that her parents kept padlocked. Anyway, on this particular night, I was staying over. We'd been watching horror movies and eating popcorn down in her room. Lights off, blankets up to our noses. I remember at some point, around 2 a.m., the room started to feel off, like we were being watched. We paused the movie. Just silence. Then, faintly, barely there, we heard a tap, like someone flicking a fingernail against wood. Tap, tap, tap. Maddie muted the TV. Did you hear that? I nodded. We both stared toward the basement stairs. Nothing. Another tap. Then a slow creak. She jumped up and turned the light on. Nothing. But the room felt wrong. Like the air had turned to cement and was pushing down on us. I'm not staying down here, I said. Let's go upstairs. Maddie agreed, but we both kept glancing at the locked storage door as we grabbed our stuff. That's when it happened. We were halfway up the stairs, me in front, Maddie behind. Suddenly, I heard her scream. And I mean scream. Blood-curdling. I turned just in time to see her body fly past me, as if something had shoved her hard from behind. She hit the top of the stairs, shoulder first, and her head smacked the wall so hard, the plastic light switch cracked off and part of the drywall buckled inward. She crumpled to the ground, unconscious. I screamed for her parents. Her mom, Aunt Carrie, called 911 immediately. Maddie had a full-on concussion, and when she came to, her eyes were dilated, and she kept mumbling something like, "He didn't want me to leave." He who? We asked her, but she passed out again. She was rushed to the ER and had to stay overnight. The doctors asked if she fell. I told them the truth. She was pushed. By what? They asked. I had no idea. That night, after Maddie was taken to the hospital with a concussion, I stayed behind at the house with her mom and two younger cousins, her little brother Tyler, who was 11, and their youngest cousin, Emma, who was 9. All of us slept in the living room. The lights stayed on. Nobody said it out loud, but we were all scared. Carrie, Maddie's mom, kept pacing in the hallway, murmuring into her phone. Tyler was passed out on the big sectional sofa. Emma curled up in a nest of blankets on the floor. I chose the armchair, tucked under my hoodie with a pillow over my chest like a shield. At some point, I dozed off. I don't know what time it was when I woke up, but something felt off, like there was pressure in the room. The kind of pressure that fills your ears right before a thunderstorm. And that's when I noticed him. Someone was sitting next to me on the floor, right by the armchair. I turned my head slightly and caught the shape of a boy out of the corner of my eye, legs pulled up to his chest, head tilted forward. I assumed it was Tyler. He must have woken up and sat down next to me for some reason. Maybe he was scared too. So I whispered, "You okay?" No response. He didn't move. Still half asleep, I figured he was just sulking or maybe dozing off in place. I shifted in my seat and turned away from him, facing the room, trying to fall back asleep. That's when I saw the couch. Tyler was on it, still curled up under a blanket. I froze. Slowly, terrified, I turned back toward the shape on the floor. But the space was empty. The spot where someone had definitely been sitting was completely clear. No blanket, no pillow dent, nothing. My throat went dry. I sat up straight. My heart was pounding. And then I heard it. The sound of bare feet slapping on linoleum. Smack, smack, smack. From the corner of my eye, I saw something move. A small boy, definitely not Tyler, rushed past the recliner. He leapt over the coffee table like it was nothing, ran across the kitchen, and in one swift motion, he jumped clean over the dining table, landed barefoot on the tile with a soft thud, and disappeared down the basement stairs. Gone. I screamed. Tyler and Emma both jerked awake, disoriented. Carrie came rushing in from the hallway in a panic. I pointed toward the basement. There was a boy. He was in here. He sat right by me. Then he ran into the kitchen and went downstairs. Carrie turned on all the lights and checked every room. She even walked down into the basement with a flashlight. Nothing. I swear he was here, I said, my voice shaking. She knelt beside me and placed her hands on my shoulders. You were dreaming, Serena. You're exhausted. You've been through a lot tonight. But I wasn't asleep. I didn't imagine it. That boy had been real. And something told me he'd be back. Carrie did what every adult does in horror movies. She told us it was just a dream. But I could tell, even as she said it, she didn't believe herself. Her eyes kept darting toward the basement door. She didn't say it out loud, but the lock on the storage door down there had never been for paint cans. Later that day, Maddie came home from the hospital. She was pale, tired, and had a bandage wrapped around her head. She said she didn't remember much, just that when we were going up the stairs, it felt like two cold hands gripped her spine and shoved her upward. They didn't want me to leave, she whispered. Whoever they are. We told her what I saw. At first, she tried to laugh it off. But when I described the boy's clothes, the button-up shirt, the suspenders, the waxy skin, she went quiet. Then she said something that made my stomach twist. I used to dream about a boy like that when I was little, she said. I'd see him in the reflection of the basement window. I thought it was my imagination. It wasn't. We begged her mom to open the padlocked storage room at the bottom of the basement stairs. At first, she refused. She said there was no reason to stir up old junk. But something changed in her demeanor after Maddie's injury, like she'd been shaken into admitting the truth was no longer avoidable. That night, Maddie's dad came home from work early. We told him everything. He didn't argue. He just went into the garage, got his bolt cutters, and without a word, walked down to the basement and snapped the lock. The door creaked open on rusted hinges. Inside, the room was small, no bigger than a walk-in closet, but every wall was lined with boxes. Old, yellowed, some falling apart. The smell of mildew, old wood, and something faintly metallic filled the air. One by one, we opened the boxes. They were full of children's toys, but not plastic ones. These were old, wooden trains, tin wind-up dolls, marbles in a cloth pouch, a child's shoe, A small red rocking horse, the kind that creaked when you moved it. Then I found it. At the bottom of one box, underneath a dust-covered blanket, was a photograph. It was black and white, half burnt. The edges were curled and flaking. The image showed a young boy, around 6, sitting on the same rocking horse in the room. His smile was wide but crooked. One of his eyes looked darker than the other, like it had been blackened or damaged. The back of the photo said, Elliot at age 6, 1972. Carrie dropped the picture as if it burned her. Her hands started shaking. I know that name, she whispered. I saw it on the deed. The house belonged to the Reeds before us. The boy, Elliot Reed, he died here. That night, we didn't sleep downstairs. None of us even wanted to be in the house. But Maddie was still recovering, and Carrie refused to spend money on a hotel. She set us all up in the living room again. Air mattresses, sleeping bags, anything to keep us from sleeping alone. At around 1:30 a.m., I woke up to the sound of scratching. It was faint, rhythmic, like fingernails on drywall. Scratch, scratch, scratch. I thought maybe it was the dog, but the dog was in his crate, asleep. I looked toward the wall. The sound was coming from inside it. Maddie was awake too. I saw her eyes wide open, fixed on the same spot. Don't move, she mouthed. Then the scratching stopped, and in the silence, we heard it. A voice, a child's whisper, muffled, guttural, coming from the wall. I don't want you here. The lights flickered. Emma, who was sleeping closest to the wall, shot up screaming. He touched me. His hand came through the wall. Everyone jumped up. We were all screaming now. Carrie came rushing in and turned the lights on. Emma was shaking, pointing at the wall. We pressed our ears to it, half expecting to hear scuttling rats or something logical. Instead, we heard whimpering, like a child crying quietly. And then, from the other side of the wall, 3 knocks. Knock, 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 right against our ears. 2 days later, Maddie started acting strange. She would go quiet mid-sentence, stare into corners like someone was whispering to her. She said she could see him better now. One morning, I found her in the basement, alone, standing in front of the small rectangular mirror above her dresser, which she had turned toward the wall. What are you doing? I asked. She didn't turn around. He doesn't like his reflection, she said. I walked closer. Who doesn't? The boy. Elliot. He said the mirror lies about what he looks like. I touched her shoulder and she flinched violently. Don't touch me, she screamed. Then she looked me in the eye, and I swear to God, for a second, her pupils looked like vertical slits. She blinked. They were normal again. She collapsed to the floor sobbing. I can't stay here anymore, she said. He wants me to stay down here forever. That evening, Carrie made a decision. She called a local paranormal group, a small team who documented hauntings in older Colorado homes. They showed up with cameras, EMF detectors, and a medium named Celeste. Celeste walked the house for nearly 30 minutes before even saying a word. She refused to go down to the basement at first. There's something buried beneath this house, she finally said. Not just physically, emotionally, spiritually. Something angry, something pretending to be a child. We all looked at each other. You mean it's not Elliot? Celeste shook her head. It might have started with Elliot, but whatever's here now, it's not him anymore. It's something else, Celeste insisted on holding a seance. Maddie refused to participate. So we stayed upstairs while they set up in the basement. Candles, relics, recorders. At one point, the camera equipment started glitching. EMF meters spiked to dangerous levels. And then the lights blew out, just in the basement. From upstairs, we heard a scream. One of the crew members came running up, white as a sheet. They found something buried behind the wall under the stairs. They tore through the drywall and found a false panel nailed over a cavity. Inside, a small wooden box. In it were 7 children's teeth, blackened with age, a pair of wire-rimmed glasses, and a journal. Only one page was legible. It read, "I told them not to bring him back. He followed me. He sleeps beneath. He speaks through the boy." After the seance and the discovery of the teeth and journal, Carrie demanded answers. She wanted the house cleansed, burned, sold, whatever it would take to get rid of whatever it was. But the investigators warned her, "This thing doesn't haunt the house anymore. It's attached now." To who? Everyone turned toward Maddie. That night, Maddie began to change. Her mood flipped like a switch. Silent 1 minute, screaming the next. She wouldn't eat. She wouldn't sleep. She insisted her room downstairs was safer. Even after everything that had happened, we tried to keep her upstairs. But around 3 a.m., I woke up and she was gone. I found her standing in the basement, barefoot, staring at the mirror. "It's not him," she whispered. "He's using him." The rocking horse began to move on its own. Just a soft back and forth creak. I reached out to grab her hand, and she bit me. Hard. I screamed, pulled back. Blood ran down my finger. Maddie blinked, looked confused, then collapsed again. Later, Tyler told us he saw her standing at the foot of his bed the night before, just standing there, smiling, not blinking, not speaking, just watching. He didn't sleep at all after that. The final straw came with the dog. Rusty was an old golden retriever. Friendly, quiet, protective. He had never once acted aggressive in his life. But one night, he lost it. We heard him barking and snarling downstairs like he was being attacked. When we ran down, we found him in Maddie's room, growling at the mirror, his hackles up. Then, without warning, he threw himself at it, smashing the glass. He cut himself open deep. There was blood on the walls. His howls were inhuman. He died on the way to the emergency vet. The vet asked what could have spooked him so badly. No one had an answer. But Maddie whispered under her breath, "He saw what's behind the mirror." 3 days later, we all agreed Maddie needed professional help. A psychologist, a priest, anything. That night, we planned to drive her to stay with relatives across the state. But before we could leave, it happened. I was brushing my teeth when I heard Emma scream from the living room. I ran out and saw the drywall flexing, like a lung, in and out, in and out. A heavy, wet breathing sound filled the room. Maddie stood in the center of the room, eyes closed, head tilted back, arms out like a puppet. And then she spoke. But it wasn't her voice. It was a man's. Deep, scratchy, cold. "You opened the door. Now I'll never leave." The lights exploded. Every bulb in the house. Tyler hit the breaker and tried to drag her away. Maddie threw him backward with such force that he hit the wall and cracked his collarbone. That's when Carrie called 911. The police came. So did paramedics. They sedated Maddie and took her to the hospital. Again. This time, she didn't speak for 48 hours. She just sat in a chair, staring into a corner of the room, her lips twitching like she was whispering to someone. That's when Carrie finally admitted the full truth. When they bought the house, they were warned it had a history. The boy, Elliot, had fallen down the stairs and died. Yes, but he wasn't alone. There had been a man renting the basement at the time, a family friend. No one ever said it directly, but neighbors suspected he was hurting Elliot. One day, Elliot's older brother found something bad. He tried to confront the man. The man killed him, buried him under the stairs, told the family Elliot ran away. The family moved. The case went cold, but no one ever removed the man's things from the basement because he never left. He was found dead weeks later, hanging from the ceiling rafter. Apparently, his body was discovered smiling. A week later, Maddie came home. She was quiet, fragile. The house felt worse than ever. And that's when Carrie decided the house had to go. We packed up and left for a motel. That night, lightning struck the home. It caught fire. Investigators said it was strange. There had been no storm warnings, and the lightning strike was a rogue, a freak bolt. But the house burned completely to the ground. Every single room, including the basement, turned to ash. Except for one thing. The photo. The same half-burnt photo of Elliot on the rocking horse was found by firemen sitting untouched in the middle of the yard. Not even scorched. It's been 5 years. Maddie is doing better now. Sort of. She doesn't remember much. Just flashes, mirrors, the smell of burning wood, the voice in the wall. She refuses to have any mirrors in her home. None of us talk about it much. The lot where the house stood is still empty, overgrown with weeds. The basement foundation is still there, cracked and blackened. Sometimes, when people walk by, they swear they hear children crying beneath the ground. And one neighbor said he saw a small boy standing in the weeds one night. He waved, then disappeared into the earth. And that, my dear chicks, is the full rotisserie of the basement boy. Was it Elliot reaching out from beyond? Or something far more foul hiding behind his smile? Either way, let this be a warning. If your basement door is locked, maybe just leave it that way. Not every mystery is meant to be uncooped. Until next time, keep your wings tucked and your flashlight closer. This is Hen House Files, signing off.